U.S. Women's Foil National Team Coach Buckie Leach, the legend Buckie Leach. Coach, over the course of your coaching career, you've developed numerous athletes who have achieved incredible success at all levels. At this stage of your career, what is the Buckie Leach system that continues to develop these successful athletes?
I'm not 100% sure there's a system. I have an old student, Sean McLean, who would say that it was because I keep changing things all the time. My fencers end up being very adaptable. So one day you come in and you're supposed to parry 4 this way, and 2 days later you come in and I've completely changed it. So there's a constant adapting, and I think I'm always adapting and changing. So I think a lot of my athletes have a pretty good degree of flexibility. And I really let athletes go their own way a lot of the time to find what they're comfortable with.
And actually, Coach Sean McLean in particular talked with us about us in that one day he felt he was doing something the perfect way, exactly correct as you were asking him, but then later you were just on him about doing it a different way. How do you kind of condition those athletes to come around to do exactly what it is you're looking for?
I think it's if they're working with me, they kind of have to deal with it. So it happens, and I do change. I try not to change too much, but I know there are times. And Sean was with me at a stage where if he didn't change right away, there were much more dire consequences than there are now. But I think it's important for an athlete to be able to adapt in their lessons and adapt in their fencing. So I give them the freedom to do that.
The fencing right now, international fencing, is at a state where it's progressing and evolving constantly from World Cup to World Cup. How do you see your creativity and constant adaptation with your athletes to kind of align with the evolution of fencing?
I'm always traveling, so I'm always seeing what's happening. I think one problem with it is that when I see trends or I see things, I tend to move in that direction probably a little sooner than I should. So I end up actually getting into trouble or getting in my own way almost by being kind of flexible and making adjustments as I go along, because sometimes I move away from what I know has worked to something that might work, and then I'll give it a try with an athlete. So it's not always the most successful way to do things. It can be very confusing to myself and an athlete.
And with fencing being such a complex sport, physically, mentally, what things are you studying or looking at within fencing to try and identify a trend before it really develops broadly?
You know, I'm not the best at identifying why something is happening, but I can see it when it does start to happen. I'm not always the best analytical person right from the start, so I need to see something happening, and that I can make an adjustment. My ability to see how things are going isn't great.
And since, some of the early days, Coach Sean McLean, you also have the Zimmerman sisters, along with many, many others. How has your style as a coach changed in the most significant way from then to now with Nzinga Prescott?
I don't think the style of my coaching has changed that much. I think my attitude and my demeanor has changed quite a bit. I'm much more relaxed, easygoing than I used to be. But I think it's the same thing. I allow the athletes that freedom to do what they want. And often athletes have better ideas than I do. So I remember for years giving Felicia lessons, and I would suggest this, or have in my mind she would react this way to something that I did, and then she would react completely differently, and I would be like, whoa, that was a better thought than mine was, so let's go with that. So, and athletes will feel things, and I kind of give them the opportunity. That's why you were asking me earlier about not speaking too much in my lessons. I don't talk too much and try to give athletes opportunities to do what they might feel. So I might throw something different into the lesson and see how they react. If they react a certain way, I'll continue with that way rather than going the way that I would have maybe previously thought to go.
And have you always done a moving lesson with your athletes?
Yeah.
So
Less and less as I get older. But yeah, I moved a lot more when I was younger. Yeah.
With that, in talking about the absence of speech, it's very choreographed to me when watching it. It's like a dance, or you're a composer, and you're guiding your athlete through this lesson. But again, because of the complexity, how are you prompting them to show them different looks, angles, whatever it might be, and how do they know to respond to certain triggers?
A lot of the responses are responses that they would normally have. I mean, we spend a lot of time, also, I don't know that you see that many lessons with the younger kids, but there's a lot of time where we work on different specific actions, and there are a lot of options that they can choose from one action that I have, and I allow them to choose the option that they want. Sometimes I will give them specific guidance about how they should. So I'll show something, pull my arm back a little bit more, and then they need to counterattack instead of parrying. Sometimes I may make the same action over and over again, and the athlete gets to choose what action they do. So I start an attack. They can do a false action and parry. They could get away and start. They could counterattack. They could make an attack on my preparation. So they have the freedom to choose that, regardless of how I start.
Another thing with that is talking with some athletes who have either worked with you or who watch you. They talk about kind of your tempo and how it's really dynamic or diverse. Mm-hmm. Is that an accurate observation?
Yeah, I guess.
Whereas some coaches
more so than others, but yes.
Some coaches prefer just a couple different tempo variations.
Yeah.
You tend to be, just to have a really broad variety of kind of the different tempos in which you work.
Because I can't decide what I want to do that day. So it could be that at one moment I want this and the next moment I want that. So it's very intuitive. Somebody described it, like when people start to ask me about exactly how I approach things, sometimes it's a little confusing for me, or it's hard to get an answer for what exactly is happening. And I think my coaching is very intuitive. So when I have to quantify things, it's a little bit of a challenge for me, because it's more about what I feel at those moments. I'm not a structured person. My mind doesn't work in a structural, linear way. It's just kind of got a lot of stuff going on in there at the same time. And I think very often I approach a lesson or their training that way. And I kind of get lucky that's effective.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, effective indeed, and we hope it continues to be extremely effective in the short term and the long term.
Thank you.
Thank you.